Albuquerque Journal reporter Dan McKay has covered City Hall for years, and he was there as usual to report on City Council Monday night. The council was supposed to address two proposals regarding the chief of police. One would make this an elected position. The other would still give the mayor power to hire the chief, but that would be subject to approval by council. None of that took place, as protesters tried to serve a citizen's arrest warrant on Police Chief Gordon Eaton. And after Council President Ken Sanchez halted the meeting and city staff left, protesters took over the dais and held a no-confidence vote on Mayor Richard J. Barry and his top administrator, Rob Perry. As we tape the show on Thursday, the City Council was planning to meet again that night to address these issues and more. Dan, thanks for coming in. Interesting how these things go. You can cover City Council for a long time, not seeing anything close to that. What, in essence, happened in reflection for you Monday night? What happened? What kicked this whole thing off?
Well, I think that there has been building frustration for quite some time about the state of the police department and whether the mayor and the city council have done enough to address the problems or take steps to improve the department. There's been a cohort of people who've been going for years, mostly the family members of people shot and killed by police, who've been testifying before the council, haranguing them, criticizing them, pushing for more dramatic change. And in recent weeks, I've seen a lot of new faces have been showing up, especially since the shooting of James Boyd, the homeless camper in the foothills in March. And on Monday, there were this week, Monday, there were even new faces still, and it was clear that they had a plan. This was all planned out beforehand. David Correa, the UNM professor, although he's, obviously UNM has distanced itself from his comments, but he, he basically decided that he wanted to do something, it sounds like, in the tradition of some other activist groups in Albuquerque, including the land grant activists and Chicano activists. And that's where they seized on the idea of a citizen's arrest. And basically, it was chaos in the council chambers, and not like something I'd ever seen. Or I talked to people who've been watching the council for decades and haven't seen anything like that in at least 30 years.
Sure. Council President Ken Sanchez was in a tough spot, certainly. And at one point, he tried to call for a 5-minute break just to let things cool down. That didn't quite work. Where do you think he was on that meeting, his efforts to try and control the meeting, and then subsequently the new set of rules, so to speak, that council has come out with for the Thursday night meeting of last night? What's your sense of where Ken Sanchez is at this point?
I think he was surprised on Monday. As council president, he's tried to be fairly lenient. I think that he has given people the benefit of the doubt as they come to speak before the council. And now what you're seeing is a lot of councilors are feeling like perhaps he's been too lenient or given too much benefit of the doubt to the speakers.
And sometimes that comes across where he was not quite as hard on the 2-minute limit. If people had something to say, he would let them say it out of courtesy. But you could almost sense that perhaps that was going to turn around a little bit. There was maybe some liberties taken. Other councilors were getting a little frustrated with that. Is it your sense that was part of the discussion before these new rules came out, that they all had to have a huddle and say, look, let's figure this out. Something's not quite working here.
Yes, I think they definitely decided they want to change.
Yeah.
I don't know that they all met. They're not allowed to meet in private. But,
that's true too, right.
But I'm sure that Sanchez spoke with individual councilors, and I know that some of them are quite frustrated and wanted to change the way way public comment happens. So Sanchez has been, in order to give people extra time to come up and know when they're going to speak, he usually reads out the names of the next 4 or 5 speakers. And so they all come down and wait while the first speaker finishes his or her comment. Often people come down with signs and crowd around the speaker as he or she is speaking. And it sounds pretty clear that that's going to change, that he is going to call up one person at a time. They don't want a bunch of people congregating around the podium. Their intent is not to allow any signs at all tonight. So we'll see how it goes. These council meetings can be kind of volatile when you have a lot of people in an enclosed space, and we'll just have to see.
And there's also been announced, again, this is so awkward since we're talking about this after the fact, and I apologize to put you in this position, but we're also talking, some folks are planning, as we tape this on Thursday afternoon, to come and continue the process of protest. And so we'll have to see how that all plays out. I'm curious about the sign thing. I've talked to a couple folks, in the short 24 hours we've had since the new rules have come out. It's like, is that really possible? Is it from a free speech standpoint, or is it a safety issue? And then in that regard, in your sense, how safe were staff and counselors that night? There's been conflicting visions and versions of how safe people either were or weren't that evening. What was your sense of the safety issues?
I would say city employees looked scared. They left the chambers pretty immediately after the meeting was recessed, and then they came back when Sanchez tried to recall order, but and left quickly again. So I did see some fear, it looked like to me. Personally, I did not feel threatened or scared. There were a lot of, looked to me like a lot of college type people in the audience. These weren't people who made me feel unsafe, but it was, there definitely was the potential for something to happen if there had been another spark beyond just the citizen's arrest. If officers had come in and started carting people out in handcuffs, it could have been it could have turned violent. But personally, I didn't feel unsafe. It seemed to me pretty clear that they had a demonstration they wanted to make that included taking over the dais and holding a series of votes. Things calmed down. They didn't stay in the chambers all that long either. They ended up leaving after about a half hour or 40 minutes.
And in your reporting, by the way, we're going to wrap up here in a second, but in your reporting I found interesting that a lot of the counselors after the fact were mingling with the citizens and talking and trying to talk it out. That's an interesting little wrinkle. So Dan, thank you very much for coming in to talk about this. It was fascinating. It's been around the country, so to get a little more insight really is very, very helpful. So coming up, our next candidate interview, Attorney General Gary King.